ask questions. Welcome to the Offshoot. I'm the host, Sean Nelson. I have a very special guest today, Councilman Zachary Parker. He is the Ward 5 council member in Washington, D.C., which is primarily northeast of the city. Councilman Parker, welcome to the Offshoot.
Thank you for having me.
Let's jump right into this. Let me ask this first question. What do folks get wrong about DC government and the council?
What do they get wrong? I would say a lot. DC is a city that, in many ways, operates as a state. And here's my plug that we ought to be the 51st state. And I think what they get wrong is thinking we're just a typical American city, when in fact we operate as a state would in many functions, as does the council, given our oversight functions, our budgetary functions. I would also say DC is a fairly well-run city in comparison to many other jurisdictions. We just had our, what was it, 28th consecutive budgetary audit, and it talks about the strength and the health of our city operations. Last thing I would just say is there is more to DC than just the federal enclave
Yeah.
and the monuments and the museums, and many of us know that because we live here. But I think for much of the world, they see DC as those monuments and museums.
I agree with that. And I also know that for many, many years, there has been a movement to make DC a state. But as you are aware, an executive order has come out of the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And that order, for the most part, let's sum up and say, wants to remove DC from its home rule status and return it back to a control board. Where does the council stand on this? And what is the council doing to try to counteract that executive order?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're against it. Uh, it's worth noting that this isn't new legislation. Senator Mike Lee introduced a similar bill last year. The makeup of government was different then, so I think the threat is heightened now that Republicans control both the Senate and the House,
Mhm.
and there's a Republican president. That said, I still think the likelihood of this advancing at this time is slim. What I would also argue is the justification points embedded in the bill as to say why we should take away home rule are just not sound.
Yeah.
Again, our budgetary power, our drop in crime, how we operate as a city with city services are unparalleled, even with Senator Lee's jurisdiction. And so, yeah, we are against it. That said, we are still working as a council and the mayor and the attorney general weekly, interfacing with federal partners, the president, the U.S. attorney,
Yeah.
members of Senate and the Congress to ensure that they're clear on what we're doing, what we actually need, and how we can partner to advance our shared interests and priorities, and to kind of knock down some of these clearly political attempts to score points.
And you're right. And as you said, this is not new. This is something that has come up before when Republicans try to take over DC government. But their argument is that crime is out of control in the city. And of course, they blame the mayor, they blame the council. But I also wonder if they're undercoverly trying to blame the large Black population within this city. Is that saying too much?
Well, I don't know about that, and I can't speak to that, but I think it's also important to contextualize where we are with crime. We are seeing a steady decline in crime overall at a macro level over the last 2 decades. We
Okay.
did see a significant spike in crime in 2023, and from that time to last year, we saw a roughly 35% decline in crime. I think it's fair to say that that was in response to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, and these are natural ebbs and flows that occur in every jurisdiction with crime. Again, I think it's more about politics than it is substance. It's easy to say a major Democratic city is poorly
Mm.
run and is violent. But I would just point you to the facts, and the facts don't back that up.
Yeah, I would agree. DC is a progressive city, and the city has had a surplus for some years, and I've been here for more than 30 years, and I love this city. And there are a lot of folks moving into the city, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time last year, we had a increase in population, so people are coming back into the city. With that being said, do you think that as the city continues to grow in terms of population, that new legislation or bills, if you will, or ballot measures like Initiative 83, do you think that would have an impact on the city's political landscape, especially when it comes to uh,
Sure,
people of color,
sure, sure.
and people of color
Yes,
serving in the council? Yeah.
yes.
And I'm thinking long term, I'm thinking 10, 20 years down the road.
Initiative 83, which essentially incorporated ranked choice voting,
Mhm.
which is a voting system that allows residents to rank their top picks versus bullet voting, which is typically how we think about voting. And then it also incorporated open primaries, which would allow, namely independents, to vote in the Democratic primary in the district. Given
Mhm.
that district is such a significantly Democratic city, many would argue that the primary is where the action is, and whoever wins that Democratic primary is likely to go on and win the election in the general. It was overwhelmingly supported and voted by district residents, I think by more than three-quarters of residents that voted. And so, yes, it will have an impact. I think neighbors have a right to scrutinize these attempts, but they also have a right to engage in the process. This is part of democracy, and neighbors rightly engaged in the democratic process to vote. What I will say personally, I don't know if ranked choice voting is the boogeyman that everyone tries to make it out to be.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I'm personally skeptical of open primaries. I'm not necessarily against it, but I am skeptical as a proud Democrat and someone who caucuses with Democrats and works within the Democratic Party. To
Yeah.
me, it seems curious that someone that is not in the party ought to be able to vote and decide things for our party. And so I see it less as a general or an election and more about a party apparatus.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sold there on the open primaries.
Yeah, I hear you. And you say that you see it as less of a boogeyman than some people make it out to be.
Yes.
But there are lawsuits out there. I mean, the DC Democratic State Committee is part of a case where they are, I'm assuming, going after the DC Board of Elections to say, hey, this should have never been on the ballot to begin with.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay.
But what I meant by, there are, I think, valid concerns around how ranked choice voting or any type of voting change
Mhm.
might disrupt or disempower constituencies in the district, namely our seniors,
Yeah.
namely Black and Brown residents, especially those in wards 5, 7, and 8, who arguably are furthest from opportunity and power in the district.
Yeah.
And I think we ought to grapple with that. That said, as we look to other jurisdictions who have moved towards ranked choice voting, I have not seen the evidence that there is such a disenfranchisement of those constituencies that we ought to be concerned here. That is not necessarily to say that I'm advocating that we implement ranked choice voting right this minute. I'm just not convinced that it is the boogeyman that everyone tries to make it out to be. I will go one step further to say I also think it's quite offensive to suggest that seniors, Black and Brown people can't figure out ranked choice voting. In many ways, we engage in ranking our choices on any number of things every day, whether it's what we want when we go buy food or if it's how we select different options at a kiosk of your choosing. We do ranking all the time. So I think this is something the council is going to wrestle with. I think the mayor has made no secret that she doesn't support I-83. I think
Mhm.
the chairman doesn't support it. I think the chair of the relevant committee doesn't support it. So the future of I-83 is uncertain at best, but I still anticipate us having robust discussion about it.
Yeah, but it has to be funded. That's one thing. And also,
Yes.
when I talk to folks about this initiative, they refer to, like you said, other jurisdictions, other states, but DC, like you said, is not a state. And I think DC is a unique animal when it comes to other jurisdictions. Um, so why compare apples to oranges? You know, when it comes to this kind of initiative, what may have worked in, say, New York or California, does that necessarily mean with something like this, it's going to work in
I mean,
Washington?
but New York City, another city, albeit a very large city, implemented
Yeah,
ranked choice voting, and residents figured it out. Again, I'm not here to
yeah.
make the case for it. I just think we should debate on the merits and not
Hmm.
double down on the fear.
Yeah,
I also think when you talk about funding something like this, there's a tension because when three-quarters of residents say that we ought to do something, I think we have a responsibility to address that head
obligation.
on. At
Yeah.
the same time, the district is likely to face a very tough budget cycle. And I'm not convinced that money should go towards ranked choice voting and certainly open primaries
Yeah.
as opposed to education and or any number of other benefits that are going to directly benefit district residents. So again, I don't know if this is a slam dunk in and of itself by any
Yeah.
means.
Do you think that the long-term goal or the objective of the Republican Party, particularly on the national level, is to make DC a less progressive, less democratic city?
I don't know. I can't guess what Republicans are attempting to do. What
Hmm.
I will say is, in my short life, what I grew up thinking the Republican Party was focused on were family values,
Hmm.
respect for authority and the police and our military, making sure that we were fiscally responsible. Those were the themes of the Republican Party of yesteryear. And
Yeah.
the Republican Party we have today I think are challenging those norms on many fronts. And so I can't begin to guess what they are interested in. What I
Mhm.
would say is, as a district, we are strong, we are vibrant, we run a well city. That doesn't mean that we don't need to improve things, but I
Yeah.
think I would put our stats and record up against any other jurisdiction. Yes, we have our issues, but I think by and large, we're a very well-run city.
Where are there opportunities for improvement?
I think we need to continue to work to drive down crime. And with that, I don't think the solution is just more police and more prosecutions. Yes, we must hold people accountable, but we also need to address the root causes of crime.
Mhm.
We see, for example, that less than a third of our students are able to read and write. Many of our students are graduating our schools not proficient, not going on to college, not being able to obtain long-term employment. And so we have to address that because ultimately we are contributing to our public safety
Yeah.
issue. I also think we have a mental health crisis that we're not doing nearly enough about.
Hmm.
And we're fortunately, we've seen a slight decline in our opioid deaths, but the numbers of mental health issues and cases that we're seeing and how that interplays with violence and any number of other areas is concerning. And the last thing I would say is the district's economic landscape is shifting. As you
Yeah.
know, the work from home environment that was birthed through the pandemic has wreaked havoc on the district, namely downtown, where many of our downtown offices sit vacant. Why is that important? Because downtown is an economic engine for the district, where nearly a third of our revenues come from downtown. And so we need to continue to work to reimagine downtown, to drive traffic there, to diversify our economic base in order to weather future storms. So those would just be three areas that I would highlight: public safety, making sure we really give our young people opportunity, and diversifying our economic foundations as a city.
Okay, I have two final questions for you. I do want to ask about downtown and revitalization, but
Yes.
some people tend to equate crime with young people.
Mm.
Not all, but those of us who are actually out in the community and working with young folks, we know that's not the case. So, how do we combat that? How do we get people to see that you can't just equate crime or an increase in crime with young folks? And you, I know, just became the committee chair of the youth.
Committee on Youth Affairs,
Okay,
yes.
yes,
And I
okay.
really appreciate that point. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority of our young people are doing the right thing. and they are doing as we're asking them, going to school, engaging productively in recreational outlets, going on to college, choosing the careers of their choice. There are some young people
Mhm.
that sadly go down the wrong path, and when they do, we need to meet them there. Meet them at their place of need and help them turn their lives around. I agree that it is not just a juvenile issue. We need to think more comprehensively about public safety. We know that there is a very small fraction of individuals that contribute to the lion's share of crime in the city. And at the heart of that, we need to strike a better balance between accountability and support. The council sought to kind of strike that balance with legislation last year. And that's still a work in progress. But it's also not just violent crime. We need to focus on petty crime. That includes traffic safety. So when individuals blow through our stop signs, blow through
Yeah,
our red lights, and they feel as though there is no consequence, when individuals steal packages off of people's porches and they feel as though there is no consequence, when people do any number of things and they
yeah.
feel as though they have a green light to do it, that contributes over time to a culture where individuals feel as though they can do whatever they want. And so we're moving in the right direction, but I think we need to continue to focus on public safety more comprehensively as a city.
Yeah, at some point, I do want to have a conversation about self-entitlement versus what I deem to be basic civil rights, but that's another topic in itself. But I'm gonna
Okay.
one more question before I ask about downtown. What about vocational training and or trade skills for young folks and things like the rec centers that are not open at hours when kids are actually out of school or like on the weekends, for example?
Yeah, great point. Actually, there's a legislation pending at the council that would extend the hours of our rec centers. We need to create spaces where young people can go, safe spaces where they can engage in productive play and opportunity. So that is coming. The trade-off there is that that comes with more money. And in a tight budget year, things are often being
Yeah,
cut or we're revisiting things versus doubling down and expanding budgets. Um, in terms of vocational opportunities, I'm glad you brought this up. I hear that all the time, and it is so true. We need to think about vocational opportunities or trades, but also to make sure that they are vocational opportunities of the future, thinking more in terms of artificial intelligence or cybersecurity, what have you. When my parents were in school, I think they had home ec and like auto repair. And it's not to say that those things are not still valid.
yes.
But I think the employment opportunities in those fields are different now. And so our vocational opportunities need to match the times, and we need to do it. I would just quick put in a quick plug. We do have these vocational hubs that OSSI is establishing. One is in Ward 5 in Eckington, where young people can spend part of their school year learning a new trade. I think they can learn cybersecurity, nursing, and there's another trade that I'm missing. We need to do more of that. They're going to open one
Yeah.
in Ward 8. And I would argue every young person needs that access, not just the young people that are already doing well and flying high. We need to expand that type of opportunity to all our young people.
And do you think that that could also have an impact on downtown? I know that there's talk about turning some of the vacant office buildings into housing, which it seems kind of costly to me when you think about infrastructure. There are businesses I know that are downtown, particularly when it comes to small mom and pop stores that have not made it through the pandemic and they're now gone. So how do we bring back those small businesses to downtown so quickly? Uh,
Yeah. I think doing what we're trying to do, we have a office to anything conversion fund. We have an office to housing fund, and we are leading the nation in those conversions. And to your point, it's going to take time because some of these buildings are old. Some of them need to be torn down and rebuilt anew. But we also need to be thinking about small outlets like you're suggesting and how we can just bring more traffic downtown. I think World Pride and other large scale events this year is going to provide us an opportunity to activate on a short term basis corridors downtown. One thing I want to stress though is, and as important as downtown is, we cannot forget our corridors in the heart of the city, including here in Ward 5. That's why I've been pushing the mayor in Denford to reimagine Rhode Island Avenue. So I'm excited to say between 13th Avenue and Eastern Avenue, Office of Planning is leading a study where we are identifying opportunities for development. And this year, I will be fighting for funds to invest in Rhode Island Avenue. And so I think it needs to be a both and approach downtown, but also desolate, abandoned, forgotten corridors like Rhode Island or like New York Avenue. Some might argue like Bladensburg Avenue. Think about if we were to activate those corridors, what that would mean for the surrounding areas and economic activity for the city.
Yes, I'm going to put another plug in for Bladensburg Road. Councilman Parker, thank you so much for your time. Okay. If folks want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yes, you can reach out to me personally via email at zparker@dccouncil.gov, zparker@dccouncil.gov. You can reach out to our office. You can visit my website at Zachary Parker, Ward 5, Zachary Parker, WARD, the number 5.com. And it is a pleasure to represent Ward 5 on the DC Council. And I would say congratulations, Sean. I know we are doing this podcast, I think in your personal capacity,
Yes.
but I also want to say congratulations for stepping up and serving as an advisory neighborhood commissioner for your community.
The work has just begun and there's a lot of work to get done. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it a whole lot. Again, thank you for coming on to talk with the audience. And I
Yeah,
look forward to talking with you again. I look forward to working with you in the future. And for those of you who are watching, please subscribe to this channel. You have Councilman Parker's contact information. And again, we look forward to you, Councilman Parker, out there on the streets, and your future is bright.
yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't profess to have the answers. I'm just here to ask questions.